Premature baby boy was auctioned off with umbilical cord still attached, but an old rancher bought him just to give him a name. The crack of the auctioneer's gavel echoes across the dusty main street of Bitter Creek, Wyoming territory, but it's not cattle or horses being sold today. Sheriff Marcus Dalton stands rigid beside the wooden platform, his weathered face pale as he watches something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. A newborn baby, no bigger than a man's boot, lies wrapped in blood-stained rags on the auction block, the remnants of his umbilical cord still grotesquely visible beneath the tattered cloth. "What am I bid for this here infant?" hollers auctioneer Pete Morrison, his voice cracking despite his attempts at business as usual bravado. "Mother died birthing him last night. No kin we can find. Boy's got to go somewhere before he joins her in the ground." The crowd of ranchers, drifters, and townspeople shifts uncomfortably in the October heat. Women pull their shawls tighter despite the warmth. Men study their boots, and children peer between adult legs with wide, confused eyes. This is 1882, and life is hard enough without adding the burden of someone else's unwanted child, especially one who looks like he might not survive the week. From the back of the gathered crowd, 70-year-old Ezra Whitlock watches the proceedings with growing disgust. His gnarled hands grip his walking stick so tightly his knuckles have gone white. Ezra has seen plenty of ugly things in his 7 decades on this earth, witnessed the worst that frontier life can dish out. But this spectacle turns his stomach in ways that Indian raids and cattle rustlers never could. $5 to start. Morrison continues, sweat beading on his forehead. This boy could grow up to be a fine hand. Good investment for the right family. Nobody moves. The baby's weak crying drifts across the silent crowd like a death rattle, and several people actually take steps backward. Ezra notices how Morrison avoids looking directly at the infant, how the sheriff keeps glancing toward the saloon as if calculating how many drinks it will take to wash this memory away. $3 then, Morrison's voice drops. "Come on, folks, we got other business to attend to." Still nothing. A tumbleweed rolls between the auctioneer's legs, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howls. The baby's cries grow weaker. Dr. Samuel Hayes, the town's only physician, pushes through the crowd and climbs onto the platform. He lifts the baby with practiced hands, examining the tiny form with the clinical detachment that frontier medicine demands. When he looks up, his expression tells everyone what they already suspected. "This child is severely premature," Hayes announces to the crowd. "Maybe 32 weeks along. He needs immediate medical attention, specialized care, and even then." He doesn't finish the sentence, but his meaning hangs heavy in the desert air. "So what you saying, Doc?" Morrison asks, though his face suggests he already knows. "I'm saying whoever takes this boy better be prepared for a lot of sleepless nights and probably a funeral within the month." The crowd begins to disperse. Some people walk away shaking their heads, others mutter about the shame of it all, but nobody reaches for their money. The baby's fate seems sealed until a gravelly voice cuts through the morning stillness like a shotgun blast. $20. Every head turns toward Ezra Whitlock as he limps forward, his worn boots raising small clouds of dust with each step. $20 is more money than most of these people see in 2 months, enough to buy a good horse or half a winter's worth of supplies. "You gone soft in the head, old man?" calls out Jake Patterson, a local rancher who's been trying to buy Ezra's land for years. "That baby's gonna be dead before the week's out." Ezra stops beside the platform and looks directly at Patterson with eyes that have seen 3 Indian wars, 2 mining booms, and more death than any man should witness. "Maybe," he says quietly, "but he'll die with a name." Morrison bangs his gavel before anyone can object. Sold to Ezra Whitlock for $20. As Ezra climbs the platform steps, each one a struggle for his arthritic joints, whispers ripple through the remaining crowd. Some call him foolish, others crazy, but most just watch in stunned silence as the old rancher counts out $20 silver from a leather pouch, probably the last of his savings. Dr. Hayes hands over the baby with a mixture of relief and concern. "Ezra, you sure about this? I've got to be honest with you. This child's chances are slim to none." "Doc," Ezra says, cradling the tiny form against his chest with surprising gentleness. "Sometimes slim to none is all the hope a man's got in this world." As Ezra walks away from the platform, the baby clutched protectively in his arms, people begin to follow at a distance. They want to see what the crazy old hermit plans to do with his expensive purchase. Some are genuinely curious, others just hungry for gossip, but all of them sense that something significant has just happened, though none can quite put their finger on what. Ezra's destination surprises everyone. Instead of heading toward his isolated ranch outside town, he walks directly to the small wooden church at the end of Main Street. Reverend Thomas Cooper, a thin man in his 50s with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair, meets him at the door. "Ezra, what's all the commotion about?" Without a word, Ezra pushes past the Reverend and makes his way to the simple wooden altar. The baby has stopped crying, but his breathing is so shallow it's barely visible. Ezra kneels before the cross, his old bones protesting, and speaks in a voice that carries to the back of the church where townspeople have begun to gather. "Lord, I don't ask for much anymore. Haven't for a long time. But this boy here, he deserves better than what he got so far. He deserves a name, at least. Something to call his own." Reverend Cooper approaches slowly, uncertain whether he's witnessing a religious moment or the breakdown of an old man's mind. "Ezra, what would you like to name him?" Ezra looks down at the baby's face, peaceful now despite everything. "Matthew," he says without hesitation. "Matthew Hope Whitlock. Because hope is about all he's got right now, and hope is about all I got left to give him." The church is filled with people now, all straining to hear and see. Some have tears in their eyes, though they'd be hard-pressed to explain why. Others remain skeptical, waiting for the inevitable tragedy that frontier life so often delivers. Dr. Hayes pushes through the crowd. "Ezra, if you're serious about this, we need to get that boy to my office right now. He needs proper care. I'm serious as a heart attack document." The next few hours blur together in a haze of activity. Dr. Hayes works tirelessly to stabilize little Matthew, showing Ezra how to feed him with an improvised bottle made from a whiskey flask and a strip of leather. The baby is so small that regular cow's milk might kill him, so they mix it with water and a little sugar, hoping his tiny digestive system can handle it. Word spreads through Bitter Creek like wildfire. The story grows with each telling until some versions have Ezra bidding $50. Others have the baby talking at birth, and a few even claim the child glowed with holy light during the naming ceremony. But the core truth remains the same. A 70-year-old hermit spent his last $20 on a dying baby just so the child could have a name. As evening falls, Ezra sits beside a makeshift crib in Dr. Hayes' office, watching Matthew's chest rise and fall with mechanical regularity. The baby is still alive, which is more than anyone expected 6 hours ago, but his breathing is labored and his color poor. "Ezra," Dr. Hayes says quietly, "I have to ask, why did you really do this? $20 is a lot of money for a man in your situation." Ezra doesn't look away from the baby when he answers. "Doc, you ever been to a funeral where they couldn't even say the dead man's name? Where they just put unknown on the marker and threw dirt over the box?" "Can't say that I have." "Well, I have. More times than I care to remember. And every time, I swore that if I ever had the chance to make sure it didn't happen to someone else, I'd take it." Dr. Hayes studies the old rancher's profile in the lamplight, noting the deep lines around his eyes and the way his hands shake slightly when he thinks nobody's watching. "There's more to this story, isn't there?" For a long moment, Ezra says nothing. Outside, the sounds of Bitter Creek settling down for the night filter through the windows. Horses nickering in the livery stable, the distant sound of a piano from the saloon, the bark of a dog somewhere in the darkness. Finally, Ezra speaks, his voice so low that Dr. Hayes has to lean forward to hear him. "Had a son once. Long time ago, back in Kansas before I came west. Boy named David. He'd be about 40 now, if he'd lived. What happened to him? Fever took him when he was 7. Happened fast, way these things do sometimes. One day he was running around the farm. Next day he was burning up and talking nonsense. Day after that." Ezra's voice trails off. "I'm sorry. Thing is, Doc, when we buried David, I made sure his name was carved deep in that headstone. Real deep, so the weather couldn't wear it away. And I promised him, right there at the graveside, that no child would go unnamed on my watch if I could help it." Dr. Hayes nods slowly, beginning to understand. "And you've kept that promise all these years. Haven't had much call to keep it until today. But when I saw that baby up there on the auction block, no name, no family, nobody caring whether he lived or died." Ezra finally turns to look at the doctor. Well, some promises are worth keeping even if they cost everything you got. As if responding to his words, baby Matthew stirs in his makeshift crib and opens his eyes for the first time since the auction. They're blue-gray, the color of storm clouds, and they seem to focus directly on Ezra's face with an intensity that's startling in such a tiny creature. "Hello there, Matthew Hope," Ezra whispers, extending one gnarled finger toward the baby. "Looks like you decided to stick around for a while." The baby's tiny hand closes around Ezra's finger with surprising strength, and for the first time all day, the old rancher smiles. It's a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it's genuine. Dr. Hayes watches this interaction with fascination, noting how both the old man and the infant seem calmer in each other's presence. "Doc," Ezra says without looking away from Matthew, "I'm going to need your help figuring out how to keep this little one alive." "Ezra, I have to be honest with you. The odds are still against him. Premature babies this young, especially under these conditions. I know the odds. Document been bucking odds my whole life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but you got to try." Dr. Hayes looks from the determined old man to the fragile baby and makes a decision that will change all their lives. "All right then, we'll try. But it's going to take everything we've got, and it might not be enough." "It'll have to be enough," Ezra says firmly, "because Matthew Hope Whitlock deserves his chance, same as anybody else." Outside, Bitter Creek settles into its nightly routine, unaware that in the doctor's office, 3 lives have just become intertwined by an act of compassion that defies logic, challenges convention, and might just prove that hope is the most valuable currency of all. The baby sleeps fitfully in his improvised crib, the old rancher keeps his vigil in a hard wooden chair, and Dr. Hayes begins preparing for a medical challenge unlike anything he's faced in his years on the frontier. But in the darkness beyond the lamplight, other forces are already moving. Jake Patterson sits in the saloon, nursing a whiskey and plotting how he can use Ezra's foolish generosity to finally get his hands on the Whitlock ranch. Sheriff Dalton paces his office, wondering if he should have stopped the auction before it started. And somewhere in the shadows of Bitter Creek's back alleys, a woman who knows more about baby Matthew's origins than she's told anyone watches the doctor's office with worried eyes. The night is far from over, and Matthew Hope Whitlock's story is just beginning. 3 weeks have passed since the auction, and against all odds, Matthew Hope Whitlock is not only alive but thriving. His breathing has stabilized, his color improved from the sickly gray of near death to the pink flush of a fighting infant. Dr. Hayes has been visiting daily, unable to explain his own investment in keeping this unlikely family together, but knowing that separating the old man from the baby now would likely kill them both. The Whitlock Ranch sits 7 miles outside Bitter Creek, a simple 2-room cabin with a stone chimney that sends lazy spirals of smoke into the crisp autumn air. Here, away from curious eyes and wagging tongues, Ezra can focus entirely on keeping Matthew alive without interference from well-meaning neighbors or suspicious authorities. This morning finds Ezra heating goat's milk over the wood stove while Matthew sleeps in a wooden cradle carved from pine. The baby has grown noticeably, though he's still smaller than most newborns. His features reveal a stubborn chin and those unusual blue-gray eyes that seem to see more than any infant should. A soft knock interrupts Ezra's routine. Dr. Hayes enters with barely controlled excitement on his face. "Ezra, I've been doing research about premature births. What I've discovered is remarkable." Hayes examines Matthew's reflexes. By all medical standards, a child born this early shouldn't have survived the first night. His development is progressing at an almost impossible rate. Meaning what exactly? Meaning someone might be very interested in getting him back. Hayes settles Matthew into his cradle carefully. "I've been thinking about that auction, about the mother. She had money, Ezra. Real gold coins and expensive jewelry. The kind that doesn't belong to a homeless girl wandering alone." Ezra feels a chill. You think she was running from something. Or someone. The question is who, and whether they know about Matthew. Sharp, authoritative knocking echoes through the cabin. Hayes peers through the curtains. 3 riders. Don't recognize them. Ezra checks his revolver and approaches the door cautiously. "Who's there?" "Federal Marshal Ben Carter. Need to speak with you about the infant you acquired in Bitter Creek." "Federal Marshal." Ezra's blood turns to ice. He exchanges a meaningful look with Hayes, and opens the door to reveal three men in dark coats. The leader is tall and thin with cold eyes and a carefully groomed mustache. "Mr. Whitlock, I'm Marshall Carter. We're here about the baby you purchased. We're talking about returning stolen property to its rightful owners." "That baby isn't property, Marshall. He's a human being. A human being whose mother stole considerable money and valuables from her employer. We believe the child may be key to recovering those items." Dr. Hayes steps forward. "Marshall, this infant is in no condition to be moved. He's barely surviving as it is." Carter's cold gaze shifts to Hayes. "Then you'll be interested to know there's a federal warrant for your arrest on charges of practicing medicine without proper territorial certification." Ezra realizes they're using Hayes as leverage. "What do you really want, Marshall?" "Information about where the woman hid what she stole. Babies don't carry secrets to the grave, but they sometimes carry other things. Physical things hidden with them. They think the mother concealed stolen goods with the baby. You're welcome to search, but you'll find nothing but a baby who needs care. We'll search thoroughly. But first, we need to discuss your future on this ranch." Carter's threat is clear. They can challenge his land claim. "You have until tomorrow morning. We'll be camping by Willow Creek. If you haven't decided by sunrise, we'll decide for you." After the marshals leave, Hayes produces a small object from his coat. "I found this sewn into Matthew's blanket." He unwraps a gold locket with intricate engravings and a family crest. Ezra pries it open, revealing a photograph of a young woman with dark hair holding an infant. The background shows a large house with manicured gardens, not frontier photography. "The woman in the picture isn't the mother who died," Hayes observes. "This woman is older, from money. Look at her hands, never done manual labor. So Matthew's real mother isn't dead. The girl who died was carrying him for someone else." Before they can speculate further, hoofbeats approach. A single rider, a woman in men's clothing riding with easy confidence. She stops 50 feet away. "Mr. Whitlock? My name is Catherine Morrison. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Morrison, the same name as one of Carter's deputies. "What would that be, Miss Morrison?" "My son." The words hit like thunder. She claims Matthew as her child, but the marshals want him as evidence. "You got proof of that claim?" The woman dismounts, walking slowly forward with visible hands. As she approaches, Ezra sees she's in her 20s with refined bearing despite frontier clothing. Most tellingly, she has the same blue-gray eyes as Matthew. "Mr. Whitlock, I have a story that will explain everything, but it's not one I can tell with federal marshals camped nearby." "How do you know about the marshals?" "Because one of them is my brother, and he's not here on official business." If Catherine Morrison is telling the truth, then Carter and his deputies aren't legitimate law enforcement. They're criminals using false authority. "Miss Morrison, you can come in. But if you're lying, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Whitlock." "Mr. Whitlock, if I'm lying about this, we'll all be dead before morning anyway." As Catherine Morrison approaches the cabin, Matthew stirs and opens his distinctive blue-gray eyes, focusing on the footsteps with impossible intensity. Whatever secrets his short life holds are about to be revealed, and the cost may be higher than anyone can afford to pay. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across Wyoming, and in those shadows, forces move that will determine not just Matthew's future, but the survival of everyone who has chosen to protect him.